The climax of this movie has lots of strange stuff going on. An oddly desolate office building in the heart of downtown LA, a conveniently timed gas attack drill, even more conveniently timed window washing, and a performance by Tully Marshall as the villainous industrialist who could have been the model for Mr. Burns on The Simpsons. But you may be surprised to know that most of that stuff came straight from Graham Greene's novel, which on the page has a serious and sinister tone that didn't survive the transition to sunny Southern California. The book never bothered to show the specific talents of its female lead, but going fishing in a dominatrix outfit was surely not one of them. The attraction that develops between the killer and his captive, however, that was the heart of the book. That survived intact, and audiences ate it up. This film was made on a modest $500,000 budget, but it raked in millions at the box office. Paramount rushed a follow-up into production, a second version of Dashiell Hammett's novel, The Glass Key, this one tailored specifically for Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake, even though veteran Brian Donlevy got top billing over Ladd. Both films were huge hits for the studio in 1942, and Alan Ladd would never get second billing again, or play a heavy, or not be blonde. His stock in trade became the crisp, aloof, almost icy loner, adeptly moving through a murky world of corruption, and was a persona that made him a star and suited his limited range as an actor. Lake played basically the same character on the distaff side of the fence, but with a lot more humor. Self-possessed and good with a withering wisecrack, Veronica Lake never played a blatant femme fatale. Like Lauren Bacall, she was that rare character in Noir, a sexy good girl. As popular as Ladd and Lake were together, Paramount quickly chose to star them separately, figuring it could double its box office return. But none of those pictures hit as big as their next genuine co-starring vehicle, 1946's The Blue Dahlia, written specifically for them by Raymond Chandler. In all, Ladd and Lake co-starred in 4 films and appeared together as themselves in 3 others. It would be nice to report that their popularity led to long, happy lives. Far from it. Lake always resented being pushed into show business by her mother, and before the decade was over, she was a drunk and a drug addict, and studios began steering clear of her. She made some television in the early 50s, but was essentially done by 1954. In her later years, she worked anonymously in New York as a waitress and a bartender, and she was coaxed before the cameras for the last time in 1970 to star in a god-awful horror film called Flesh Feast. She died 3 years later of hepatitis. Ladd fared somewhat better, maintaining his waning stardom throughout the 50s and smartly forming his own production company, Jaguar Pictures. But alcohol was taking a toll by the late 50s, and in 1962 he barely survived a self-inflicted gunshot near his heart that many believed was an attempt at suicide. 2 years later, an accidental combination of drugs and alcohol did him in. Both Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake died at 50 years of age. Author Graham Greene made it to 86, despite several suicide attempts in his youth that, if successful, would have snuffed out one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, less for his work as a film critic in the 1930s than for a series of novels that have earned legendary literary status. The Power and the Glory, The Heart of the Matter, The End of the Affair, The Quiet American, and those are just the books Greene considered important. His entertainments, A Gun for Sale, Brighton Rock, Ministry of Fear, Our Man in Havana, are just as good as the highbrow stuff, and became pretty great movies as well. And of course, there's also a tidy original screenplay Greene wrote for his friend Carol Reed, The Third Man. Now, what's especially remarkable about Greene's prodigious output is he accomplished it with a very strict Catholic discipline. Every day, he'd take his fountain pen and in a small black book write 500 words of his latest story, no more and no less. And from that, 67 years of novels, plays, and short stories. A blank book and a fountain pen. Imagine that. And for the record, Greene did not care for the popular movie based on his book, A Gun for Sale. This film offered another in a terrific series of roles for Laird Cregar, many of them in film noir. The roles would end abruptly in 1944. But I don't have another sad story in me today, so that one will have to wait until another time. Now, if you do social media, talk to each other about Laird Cregar on the Noir Alley Facebook page and Twitter feed. You can even ask me a question, but don't try soft soaping me. You can save it. I don't go soft for anybody. Next week, I'm presenting a film from 1948 that was less influential and less profitable than This Gun for Hire, but more artistically ambitious. John Garfield returns to Noir Alley in a film written and directed by his childhood pal, Abe Polanski. It's a look at the New York numbers racket called Force of Evil, and it's one of the most original and unusual films of the noir era. I'll see you all back here for that next week. Same place, same time.